You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC and currently Disney Plus series Doctor Who. Today we're discussing the final episode of the current season and the 15th Doctor, The Reality War. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today is Father Chip Hines. Hey, Father Chip.
Hey, Dom.
And Jimmy Aiken. Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Before we get to the show, folks, I want to encourage you to go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, and write a review, leave us a comment, give us a 5-star rating. All those things help us reach more listeners, grow this audience, and keep us going. So we really do appreciate that. And also, be sure to stick around to the end of the episode. We have more of your great listener feedback on some of our previous episodes. But first, Jimmy, can you give us a recap of The Reality War?
This week, the 15th Doctor is rescued from Fallen from the Ronnie's Bone Palace by temporary companion Anita from the previous Christmas special. She's now working for the Time Hotel and opens a time door to rescue him. Afterwards, he and Anita use Time Hotel technology to help the original reality start bleeding through so that people's memories are restored. The Ronnie appears and says that she can use Omega's body to build a new Gallifrey with a new race of Time Lords. But the Doctor insists that Poppy is his and Belinda's child, which both he and the Ronnie know is impossible since Time Lords are sterile and can't have children. Poppy is thus a child of the Wish world. This poses a challenge if the Doctor is to revert the world to the way it was. So he has Susan Twist build a Zero Room to isolate Poppy while the Wish is undone, and Belinda goes into the Zero Room with her. The Doctor and Ruby Sunday then head to the Ronnie's Bone Palace. The Doctor confronts the two Ronnies, and they bring Omega through a door to the Underverse. But he's spent so long there, he being Omega, that he's become an enormous decayed humanoid. He says he plans to become the god of time and consume the Time Lords and apparently everybody else. The newer, younger Ronnie objects, but Omega eats her in one bite. The older Mrs. Flood Ronnie takes a time ring and escapes. The Doctor then takes the Vindicator and uses it to blast Omega back into the Underverse with the power of 1 billion supernovas. So the Doctor has apparently gotten over the "I never use guns are evil" thing from when he was the 13th Doctor. Meanwhile, Ruby confronts Conrad. She ends up getting the Wish God, baby Desiderium, and she wishes that Conrad be happy. Then she wishes that the world go back to the way it was. The Doctor is reunited with the TARDIS, which was hidden in the Bone Palace. And as the Wish world is disintegrating, he, Ruby, and Desiderium go back to UNIT. The Doctor wishes that there be no more wishes, so Desiderium can't be used this way in the future. They open the Zero Room, and Belinda and Poppy are still there. Poppy survived. The Doctor and Ruby then give Desiderium to Ruby's adoptive mother, Carla Sunday, to raise. Afterwards, the Doctor and Belinda are excited to be parents of Poppy and are making plans to baby-proof the TARDIS, when suddenly Poppy and the Doctor and Belinda's memories of her disappear. But Ruby Sunday remembers. She convinces the Doctor that reality has not been properly reset and he needs to save the one person who was lost. The Doctor agrees and says that only he is powerful enough to do this. He goes off in the TARDIS by himself, and he's planning to regenerate voluntarily and channel his energy into the time vortex. Suddenly, the 13th Doctor appears, but she doesn't scold him for using a gun on Omega. Instead, they have a conversation that doesn't really seem to advance the plot. Once she leaves, the Doctor executes his plan, and time seems to shatter. The Doctor wakes up in a garden, and this is just an interlude in his regeneration, like the one the 10th Doctor had after he saved Wilf from the radiation chamber and got to see people he knew. The Doctor thus meets Belinda and her daughter Poppy. Turns out that in this new version of reality, the Doctor is no longer Poppy's father. Someone Belinda used to date was. The Doctor accepts this with grace, and he goes back into the TARDIS to finish his regeneration, and the Doctor's new face is identical to that of Rose Tyler. The end.
That's a very important way you phrase that. Thank you. We'll talk about that, all of that, as we go. That was a lot. So, Father Chip, what'd you think of this one?
Well, first of all, there was a lot going on.
I know. It took me 53 lines to summarize it, whereas normally it takes 20 to 30.
Right. I did think they wrapped up the Omega part a little quick. That part seemed,
surprisingly easy.
Surprisingly easy. Yeah, exactly.
Shoot the bad
Quote
guy.
Homer Simpson.
That's right. And so that part was surprisingly easy. But overall, I mean, it was kind of reminded me a little bit of an older Doctor Who, stuff. I mean, it was at least fun. There was stuff going on. It wasn't a lot of just sitting around, talking or doing nothing. It was a lot. There was a lot of action going on, so that was fun. I enjoyed that. I like I said, I thought they wrapped up Omega too easy and too soon. I thought it was a very undignified death for the Ronnie. I loved Anita coming back, although they didn't give her much to do other than hold the door, because apparently the Time Hotel doesn't have door stops. And let's see, and I was confused. Some of the stuff was confusing with Ruby, and the other part about Ruby that bothered me was she didn't get to say goodbye to the Doctor the way that what's her face, Belinda did. I thought that was sad. I mean, she didn't even get she didn't get the usual companion, see you later, I'll be a different face kind of routine. I don't know. I just thought that was bad. And I was a little surprised that they retconned the whole Poppy thing. We never saw any of those scenes where she said Poppy ever. She never said Poppy in those scenes. I need to get back to Poppy. I need to get
right.
So that sort of retconning of that whole situation was interesting as well. I thought not interesting in a good way, but interesting in a weird way.
Jimmy, what'd you think of this one?
Well, it was mixed. I thought, I think I mentioned last week that, we'd had a couple of stories that felt like good stories wrapped in bad stories. And last week was sort of the reverse. There were negative elements, but they were wrapped in a fundamentally good story. I think I feel kind of the same way about this. There are a lot of negative elements to this in terms of write-in, like Omega's return is basically wasted. The Ronnie, the third version of the Ronnie, she's basically wasted in this. She gets eaten in one bite, and now it can always bring her back because it's Doctor Who, but still, it felt like a waste. Anita is largely wasted. After she initially appears, she's just holding that door open because as Father Chip pointed out, the Time Hotel apparently doesn't have door stops. And so also Susan is wasted. Susan, they had this build up towards Susan, and she's not in this episode at all.
That's my huge complaint.
There are reasons for that, which we'll get into. The reason is that they shot two versions of the end of this because they didn't know if Ncuti Gatwa was staying or not. They're pretending like they do. If you watch like Doctor Who Unleashed, and which they use as a tribute to Ncuti, he's saying, "Oh, the plan was always for 2 seasons." Blah blah blah. Nonsense. Ncuti himself was saying previously, over a year ago, "Oh yeah, we're just about to start doing season 3," and it's clear he was planning on staying for 3 seasons at that point. But when Disney decided they weren't at least immediately renewing, he decided to move on. And so they actually shot 2 endings to this, which involved a bunch of reshoots. And you can kind of tell where it deviates. It's after, apparently it's at about the 45-minute mark. And they've wrapped up all the Omega stuff. They've wrapped up the baby and the wish. And then it starts with the new material, which they filmed on just 3 sets. The unit set, the TARDIS set, and the garden home set. And so they basically constructed the last 25-30 minutes out of whole cloth, and that overwrote the original ending. So wibbly wobbly, timey wimey applies to the show itself. But But in any event, I think some of the flaws, like the Susan flaw, are because of what they did, and they were constrained in terms of, what they could do in that amount of time. So I think that there were a lot of good elements in this, and I basically enjoyed it. But I think that it was also flawed, which is something you would expect, in particular because, not just because of the agenda that Russell T Davies is putting on display these days, but also because of the necessary changes in the show because of Schuette's departure. One thing I actually don't have a problem with is the return of Billie Piper as whatever she is, because that stunt cast in order to save the show. Because what it guarantees, just like when they brought in David Tennant at the end of Jodie Whittaker's disastrous run in terms of its viewing figures, that got new attention. That would bring in old time fans if he comes back at least temporarily to give the show a new chance to restart. And that's essentially what bringing in Billie Piper is the same thing, to try to give at least temporarily to try to give the show a new start.
So for my part, I agree. There was plenty to like. The action was good. The special effects, that Disney money was spent well.
Very well.
I like that stuff. I have some similar criticisms. I also just felt like I disagree on the necessity of the reshoot. The only reason they needed a reshoot is because they wanted to give Schuette the big send off, the big, I don't know, the Broadway goodbye. They could have ended it with him just going in the TARDIS and flying off, and then having the regeneration occur, like Sixth Doctor regeneration style. They could have.
Ronnie was involved in that too. So next, when the new season begins, Mrs. Flood is chasing the new TARDIS, and someone in Shooty Gatwa's clothes is laying there, and then rolls over, and it's the new Doctor.
There you go.
Could have done that, but they needed, and what we got was a super cloying, overly sentimental, we're all your children, Doctor send off, and I just I just didn't like it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was very drawn out, like 20 minutes, 25 minutes of this a very emotional, sentimental goodbye to a guy who's only been the Doctor for about 25 minutes. Like, I'm being hyperbolic, but he's not been the Doctor for very long, and we're supposed to be super, the loss. So I don't know. The other thing is the lack of consistency in the writing, in the plot development. I just feel like Russell T Davies has shown us over the last few years he doesn't really care about consistency or canon as much as Doctor Who has a canon, but even just the things like, well, Susan's inconvenient, so we just not bother tying up that thread. The fans can go pound sand after the big promise. It's like he's saying, oh, it's sci-fi, it's time travel, so consistency doesn't matter. And I just feel like it doesn't respect the audience when we just don't bother. And so I kind of felt like he was writing at the service of his own plans, not just the social justice agenda or the social agenda, but just in the service of his own, what he likes to write, as opposed to for the fans, and it's or the viewers, even beyond the fans. So that's kind of how I felt afterward. Maybe over time I will have a different feeling about it, but that's my initial, having just viewed this, within the last few days, impression. So
I talked to you on the phone right before you viewed it, and I deliberately did not spoil anything once I realized you had not seen it.
Yeah, I had been spoiled on the Regeneration. I made the mistake of scrolling Facebook on a Saturday.
Ooh.
Well, yeah. But you didn't know who he was going to regenerate into at that point.
Did not know that part, and I appreciate not knowing that. But knowing that the regeneration was happening, it wasn't as bad as the previous spoil that I got. But this it was annoying. I wish people would wait until maybe the people in America have seen it before you start posting pictures of the regeneration.
Oh, they released it at the same time in Britain and America here.
Yeah. Well, yeah. At 8:00 in the morning. I was a little busy.
No. They released it at one. They delayed it this time. They released it on Disney Plus at 1:50 Central Time.
Okay.
12:50 Central Time. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was not ready to watch it midday Saturday, I guess.
Nor was I.
So it was fun getting the Time Hotel and Anita back. That was having that be a key aspect of how the Doctor gets out of this situation.
She was great. Anita, I would love to have Anita as a regular companion. She was awesome.
Yeah, I agree. She was good in Joy to the World, and in some ways even better now. I wonder if the actress had
She also kind of has her own TARDIS in the form of the Time Hotel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was going to say, I wonder if the actress was just actually had gotten pregnant in the interim, and so they just incorporated that into the character. I would assume so, though. I wouldn't have even noticed if they hadn't pointed it out. It was not obvious.
Yeah. It wasn't obvious. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also liked how she clearly was interested in the Doctor, and then had her heart crushed, and by seeing him dancing with Rogue, and I'm going, you're not the only one who is disappointed with that
scene. Anita is all of us.
That's right.
Yeah. But it was fun to kind of see her, pop in on the 11th Doctor, pop in on the 3rd Doctor, kind of see those ones. I didn't recognize the 3rd Doctor episode. Which one was that, that story?
Oh, it's, I think it's Planet of the Daleks.
I don't think we've done that one yet. Probably soon. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my note. Ugh, it had to be Rogue.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. By the way, that's another. That's another clue that Shudigawa was not originally planning on leaving, because he said he wasn't going to leave till he'd fought a Dalek, and he's not fought the Daleks.
Oh, right. Yep. And my guess is going to say that. Yeah, a Rogue is never coming back.
Yay.
Good.
So apparently what was happening was we learned from Anita is that the day has been repeating itself. May 23rd, it's repeating itself. And the Doctor says that's because the Ronnie wants reality to get thinner and thinner and thinner until it snaps, which is new information from last episode.
And that's okay. But I mean, then the Doctor apparently didn't know the day was repeating, but he knows it now. And okay, that's a plausible explanation. But then it creates a new plot hole, which is, well, then how was Earth destroyed on May the 24th? I mean,
right.
They don't cover that, at least not
if
that
the
I
day
saw.
keeps repeating. Yeah.
And what destroyed it?
Yeah. And then we find out that Mrs. Flood apparently followed the Doctor everywhere except the Time Hotel. That's the one episode she wasn't in.
I like, because it was Christmas and she took Christmas off. So it's like, yeah, okay.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Even Time Lords get holidays. And then for some reason, Poppy being real is more important than anything else. I think it's what the Doctor says. Like, he gets so focused on Poppy being real, and this information that the Time Lords are infertile as a people, that's brand new, right?
That's brand new. So, and it's confusing because the Doctor asked the Ronnie, how did you survive the genetic explosion? And he said, and she says, well, I saw it was coming. I flipped my genetics real quick. And okay, so are you now, problem one, are you still genetically a Time Lord now?
Right.
Or are you something else now? Problem two, and I looked at TARDIS Wikia and they understood it this way as well, is, okay, the Master did this and it destroyed all the Time Lords. It's not something from the distant past, because otherwise she wouldn't exist. She wouldn't exist. So it has to be recent, and that would imply the Master did it. But then why would problem two is, why would the Ronnie have needed to do anything if she wasn't on Gallifrey at the time? And problem three, why are the Ronnie and the Doctor infertile if neither one of them was on Gallifrey when it happened? So this doesn't seem to if you want the Time Lords to be infertile and they've been using, regeneration to keep their species going, and it also it's implied it has to be recent because that's the explanation for why bigeneration is happening now. Right. It's life trying to find a way to survive in the wake of the genetic explosion that the Master caused. Right. So it all seems to point to this being the Master's doing, but it creates all these problems that don't really make any sense.
And the Doctor couldn't have been infertile in the past because the Doctor has a granddaughter.
Well, no, he told Kate that he hadn't yet had children. On the other hand, he's told various companions like Clara that he's been a father before.
Right.
And so we have an inconsistency. Now, it could be that he has a child in a future incarnation that he doesn't know when it's going to be. And that child got transported back to William Hartnell's time. And he raised that child, who then went on to have Susan. There are a number of things they could do there that would violate elements of what's been said before. But rule one, the Doctor lies. And and so, they could do something with that. And apparently they were going to do it in season 3, because apparently in the original ending, according to various leaks that turned out to be accurate about everything else, including the alternate ending.
Yeah.
The original ending of this episode was having the Doctor and Ruby and Belinda and I guess the unit people celebrating at a party. But then Susan was going to be watching everybody from a distance, and that would be the stinger, the lead in to season 3, when we'd really deal with the Susan issue.
Okay. So the Time Hotel, the opening the doors lets reality bleed in to the Wish world and starts changing everybody back somehow.
They get their memories back. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we find out what the big dinosaur things are. They're called bone beasts from the Underverse. And they're described like antibodies that feed off of atoms of unreality or something. I don't know. It went by fast.
Yeah. They're basically, they clean up stuff when a paradox like this happens. And
it's like the Stephen King story, the Langoliers.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's also like things they've done, like in Pete's Day in Doctor Who, where Rose Tyler causes a paradox with her father by preventing his death, and you have these pterodactyl like swooping in.
That's right.
These are better than the pterodactyls.
Well, visually, CGI has improved a lot.
Yes,
but personally, I thought this was one of the most boring things. Is like, okay, great. The unit tower is itself a giant
weapons platform
with a rotatable top, and they've got a ship steering wheel on it. And
that was just totally useless.
And now we get a big shoot 'em up scene, and I'm going, you're in the middle of London. You need to move this tower away from London if it's gonna attract things like this.
This is why we don't build military bases in the middle of cities.
Yeah. So I find, and I don't know if it's because I'm an American or a writer or both, but I find that big shoot 'em up scenes, especially in a show like this, are just annoying to me, because it's just people ramping up the acting, and it's not satisfying dramatically. It's, again, these are kind of plot dead zones. Nothing's going to advance until the fight is over. And
it can be good, but it takes a certain amount of talent to both write and direct action scenes that advance a plot. And you never see it in Doctor Who.
There are good actions. There are even good inaction scenes. Like if you watch The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, that thing ends with a standoff between 3 individuals. They each have guns. Who's going to shoot first? And there's a standoff that occurs, and it goes on for 8 minutes, and you do not get bored.
No, you do not.
So it can be done really well, but it tends not to be. I thought of the Simon Pegg movie Hot Fuzz, which is about Simon Pegg as a British policeman who's assigned, because he's too good, he's punished by being assigned to a village. And he gets involved in this. It turns out there are murders occurring in this village because it's a typical British murder village. And we build up to the climax. And I thought the creative way to finish the film would be no guns are used in the climax. You solve the problem without resorting to guns. And instead, we get this massive gun palooza fest at the end of the show. And I was talking to a friend who is actually Australian, but had lived in the British Isles, and he said, "No, you don't get it. They don't have guns over there, so for them this is wish fulfillment." And it's like, okay, I'm an American. I don't have problem. Guns are not secret forbidden objects here, you know. To me, guns are tools, and so just seeing a big explosion of guns being used is not going to impress me. It's going to bore me. And
we see that every day in America.
Yeah. Come on, folks. So I don't find the big spectacle of shoot 'em ups impressive.
You know, what I found creepy was the fact that apparently Unit biochips all of its employees to keep track of them.
Yeah, that was creepy. Yeah.
And you can not just keep track of them, you can influence them through the biochips.
Yes, the Unit has become more and more far from the Brigadier's vision of this organization.
Conrad had some points.
Conrad did have some points. And poor Conrad at the, towards the end there gets, I guess it's good. He's not in jail, but
he's got the ultimate. I'm not gonna go there. He gets to be a barista.
He's just, or a cook or something. He's treated poorly.
Actually, I liked what happened with Conrad. Because they set it up well. And I want to give Russell T. Davies writing credit for this, because you're expecting Ruby, after the way Conrad has treated her, you're expecting she's really mad. And she asks, she's assigned to go deal with Conrad, and she asks, "Can I punch him?" And, and Kate says, "Yes."
Yes.
And then the minute she's confronted with Conrad, he's ready for her.
Yeah.
And he's holding her at gunpoint, and she eventually, through talking to him, begins to have some more empathy with him. And she ceases to be mad at him in the same way.
True.
And she eventually, once she's got the baby, she wishes for him to be happy.
Which is a huge risk.
Because
what could he be wanting to be happy?
Yeah, but still, it shows a good heart on Ruby's part, and and I like the reversal from "can I punch him" to I want you to be happy, and that was nice, and I really appreciated that. I thought that was good. That was the most creative solution to a character conflict resolution that I've seen on this show, and I don't know how long. So props for that one. That was good and creative.
When the doctor undid all the wishes, did he undo Conrad's happiness? I hope
no. They established that wish survived.
Did they?
Yeah. So the sequence is Ruby wishes for Conrad to be happy in a context of, "You've never told me about your father." So it implies that there's some rift between Conrad and his father, which is going to get repaired by that wish.
Yeah.
Then Ruby undoes the main wish that transformed the world. Then the doctor, so everything goes back to normal. Then the doctor wishes for no more wishes. So we can't use baby Desiderium that way. And then Mel researches what's happened to Conrad, and they find out he's serving as a cook in some British town. And so the wish for you to be happy was never undone.
Okay. So there's a lot of, especially in the last two seasons, there's been a lot of religious talk or use of religious terms. At one point, where we're told about the unholy trinity of the God of wishes, the crazy time lady, and Conrad Clark, and there's the talk of hell and other things, and we keep having the Doctor twice now in 2 consecutive seasons. The Doctor ends the season by killing a god, which seems to be revisiting things.
Although Omega just said he wanted to be a god.
Yeah, he was going to be the god of time. But there's talk of it as such. Yeah.
One thing that I thought was, and I didn't like this. So there are weird parallels between both seasons. I mean, we have this elderly female character who shows up in every episode in both seasons. The first season, it's Susan Triad. Second season, it's Mrs. Flood. And it builds up to the reappearance of a classic Doctor Who foe, which is fine. But in both cases, the classic Doctor Who foe has been redesigned to be giant with Sutek at the end of season 1 and Omega at the end of season 2. And it's like, why are these 2 seasons so similar? That doesn't seem to play any narrative function. It seems to just be a lack of creativity.
Yeah. It did seem weird that it wasn't an intentional. It was, yeah.
And the way it works, you get the big bad in the final episode, and he's dealt with in the same episode, and all of his work is undone. And
very quickly.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think maybe they, it's probably a case of because we can. You know what I mean?
Well,
as far as making them these large, giant CGI creatures, I mean, they've got the Disney money; they can do what they want. And instead of having a guy in a mask, or a guy in a helmet, they decided, let's go crazy. That's the only thing I could think of. It's the only reason.
Yeah.
It's the only thing that kind of makes sense. That they
wanted to be big and impressive.
Impressive, right, exactly.
By the way, I wanted to touch base back on something I mentioned earlier about a lot of the wastes in this. Susan is wasted by not being in it. And the new Ronnie is wasted, and Sutek or Omega is wasted. Another waste is Belinda.
Yeah,
because she's previously been a character who had agency and who wanted to get back to her family on Earth. So she had motivation and agency, and here she's reduced to being Poppy's mom.
Yeah.
And Poppy herself is wasted, even though the child actress is now verbal. They don't give her anything to say.
Yeah.
And she's just a MacGuffin in this that everybody else cares about, but
they literally put her in a box.
Yeah.
To go even further, we're supposed to care so much about Poppy, but we haven't been given any opportunity to know Poppy. I have no reason to, I care about her as a person, as like any other person, and as a child, but I'm supposed to be oh, we've got to save Poppy at all costs, and it's just person who showed up 10 minutes ago.
And it's annoying because unlike most MacGuffins, she's not just a Maltese Falcon or Death Star plans. She's a person, and she's old enough to at least do something, and she never does.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It was weird. And I do want to dive into some of the ending stuff with Belinda as well. Father Chip, you talked about the adding in the stuff about now that they've changed time, Belinda remembers the reason she wanted to get back was not just to get back to her parents. She wanted to get back to Poppy. Everything was they changed time. So now that all of that is in her memories, but also before they changed time, she had all these memories of the Doctor saving her throughout her life. Kind of like the Doctor showing up in Clara's life, I guess, the thing, which was very confusing at first. Cause I'm like, wait, what? I don't remember any of that. And then I pause it, and my wife and I talked about it. She's like, no, I think he's saying that this is part of the changed world they're in. Oh, okay. I get it. I guess I get it now. But yeah, it was kind of an odd like all of these changes, and it was going by so fast. It was hard to kind of keep track of what's going on. I figured out what was going on with the Belinda remembering Poppy, but the other one was I didn't get.
Yeah, like
right
they
away.
showed the doctor saving Belinda at age 7 from a car, and he did do something where he went through her timeline earlier this season, and I guess they're just showing us more detail of what happened when he went through her timeline. Yeah, this was in the Robot Revolution in the very first episode of the season.
Oh, okay. That's right.
Oh, another weird thing is and this could be due to the changed ending, but I don't think it is. The Ronnie has the song contest droids, and there's no reason for that.
Yeah,
just the guards.
They're
just the guards.
Yeah, and also we had kids say I'll be back, and so that kind of pointed to him reoccurring here, and he never showed up, and they never did anything with the fact that these were the song contest droids. They just seemed randomly included for no reason.
I totally forgot about Kid.
Yeah, another random inclusion was it seemed to me like they took a swipe at C.S. Lewis, like referring to Narnia and hell and the universe in what like as being equivalent.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah, that was weird. I don't know. I didn't necessarily take it as a swipe. I could see it how one could take it that way.
Yeah.
My main thought was that's not how it works in Narnia, because Narnia is just one of many worlds.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Yeah, we were saying it's like Narnia isn't like any of that at all. Like, it was weird.
Yeah.
One thing I did like was the interaction between Melanie Bush and the Ronnie. That was a nice, fun Melanie remembering the Ronnie.
I'm glad there was interaction between Melanie and the Ronnie, but I didn't like the dialogue that they wrote for it. But that could just be a personal thing. I thought it was over dramatic.
Yeah, there was. You got the trope line of "I don't think of you at all." Like they stole the Mad Men line. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right.
One thing I did like though was when Ronnie was talking. I liked how once Mrs. Flood showed up, both Belinda and not in unison, but both Belinda and Ruby Sunday said she's my next door neighbor. And I liked how, and then the older Ronnie was talking about when she was Mrs. Flood and how it was so tedious to Ruby. It was so tedious putting up with you and your 57 mothers. Okay, I like that line.
Yeah.
The Ronnie is clearly racist against humans. The whole no contamination of human DNA.
Yeah.
So,
but did you see that scene? That scene though, Tom. The collective groan of everyone there. It was so weird to me. It was like, what are they? The audience? Like, it was like they were the audience of something, and it was
it's like a rap battle. Ooh,
yeah. It was just odd.
I also, so earlier I mentioned that, when the two Ronnies are summoning Omega, and they say to the doctor, don't you want to see him? And the doctor admits, yes. He stops his opposition to them summoning Omega and lets them do it. And I liked that. I then like how the new Ronnie is, when Omega says he's going to feast on the Time Lord. Well, even though I think that the character of the new Ronnie is wasted because of how short a time she survives, I do like the fact that she says, well, I think you'll find, and she raises her Sonic, which is actually the best Sonic currently on Doctor Who. It's far better than the Doctor's. And it's one of the best Sonics ever in terms of its design. She raises it to do something, and Omega just picks her up and eats her in one bite. And it's okay. I think she was wasted to be killed so soon, but I like the way they did it.
Well, I thought that there was an earlier part where I was kind of hoping they would do something similar, which was when the Doctor does show up in the Bone Palace. She scoffs that the Doctor shows up without a weapon, but platitudes and a pun. And I would have loved it if the Doctor just stood up and just shot her point blank.
Yeah,
that would have been awesome.
That would have been good, but that would have been
out of character
and too soon for the British audience to do that. Although it works in the pilot episode of Firefly.
Yeah, it does.
And it works in Indiana Jones and whichever one it is. I guess it's the first one.
Raiders of the Lost
Lost Ark.
Oh, Raiders. Yeah. Yeah.
He shoots the guy with the sword.
With the sword, which actually happened because Harrison Ford was sick that day.
I know.
And he just didn't feel like he had the energy to do the needed choreography and said, "Can I just shoot him?" And it became one of the best moments in the movie.
Yes.
But then I like how, the dynamic, I watched it more than once. The dynamic between the Doctor and Mrs. Flood is then a little weird, and I don't think I follow it quite. But I like Mrs. Flood's exit, where the time ring that the new Ronnie had falls out from, where she's just been eaten. And Mrs. Flood picks it up and says, and this will blow past many Americans, but I'll explain it. She says, well, that's it for the two Ronnies, and that's a good night for me. Okay. The two Ronnies, Ronnies, was a comedic team over in England of two men named Ron. So you had the two Ronnies, Ronnies. And as soon as Mrs. Flood bigenerated, people online were talking about the two Ronnies, Ranies. Yeah. And so this is a deliberate joke. And when the two Ronnies, they had a television show. And at the end of the show, one of the Ronnies would say, "And that's a good night for me." And the other Ronnie would say, "And that's a good night from him." And so this is a deliberate callback to that show. And I like it. I thought it was good. And it's just something I thought I'd explain because most Americans have never heard of the two Ronnies.
I've never heard of the two Ronnies.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Going back to Ruby and Conrad for a second, I just saw one of my notes where she thanked him for making a wish world that was nice and not whiskey, guns, and girls. Yeah. And I think that might have been part of what started her turning, an attitude toward him. Just a note I just noticed. The closed captioning called Omega the Beast of Omega, which I think is an interesting. He's the Mad God, the Titan, which was Thanos' titles, by the way, in Marvel.
That's right.
The original sin, the God of Time. The original sin.
The original sin of the Time Lords.
Of the Time Lords.
Of the time. Oh, because they betrayed him after he gave them time travel.
He thought they betrayed him.
Right.
When really, at least according to the received story, they just didn't know he survived.
Okay. So Mrs. Flood escapes to regenerate into another Ronnie someday, maybe. We'll see. She's at least out there. There's a possibility.
I'd like to see her as a villain.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see her come back.
They didn't need to bring in, I thought the new actress was fine, but they didn't need to bring in the new actress. This could have all been Mrs. Flood.
Yeah, that's true.
Of course, the whole time I'm thinking there is another Time Lord available. The 14th Doctor is still out there.
Yeah, and there's the Master too in the 2th.
Yeah.
The one thing I also liked on the dialogue level, I thought this was good writing. When the Doctor shows up in the Bone Palace, and by the way, I hated the way he got there on the Green Goblin glider. I don't mind that he took the Green Goblin glider. I thought that was fine.
He took the longest route possible.
He flew through a bone beast in the middle of a battle.
He's being shot at.
This is crazy. You're taking
ridiculous.
You're cutting down on their if they know you're there, you're cutting down on their ability to defend London. Right. And if they don't know you're there, they're going to shoot you.
Right.
So that's just ridiculous showboating.
And then he's hot dogging along the Thames.
It just had no. It was ridiculous.
Clock's a ticking, Doctor. Get straight to the Bone Palace.
It was
Disney money, dog.
Disney money.
Is another reason I didn't like the battle. But then once he gets there, the Ronnie has this nice metatextual speech where she says, "Oh, you've showed up and you're with no weapon." You alluded to it with you're going to give me a bunch of platitudes and a speech about the power of love. And it's like, yes, that's good. That's Russell T Davies poking fun at the tropes that the show really does use.
Well, which he's going to use at the end of this episode.
He writes them,
but it still
he uses them.
It still shows self-awareness on the part of the writer about the writing tropes that are being employed,
or at least the criticisms,
and not taking them too seriously. So, okay, I appreciate that from him as a writer.
All right.
So, why does Ruby remember and no one else does?
Well, they hang a lantern on that. She asks the question, and the doctor says, "I have no idea how you're doing this." So that's a mystery.
Maybe this 73 yards thing changed her somehow. We can speculate.
It's all anything you come up with is headcanon, because Russell T Davies has told us effectively he doesn't know. She just does.
She's special, Dom.
So Anita says the big boss says hello.
Not the big boss, just the boss.
The boss.
And we're left to guess at who that is. It is presumably the same boss that Beep the Meep referred to at the end of the Star Beast.
Oh, right.
And Beep had said that once he learned the doctor had also like the Meeps, that the doctor had two hearts. He said, "Oh, the boss is going to be interested in you because of the two hearts." In other words. And that would suggest that the boss may be a Time Lord. So it could be someone we've never heard of, although given the setup, it implies it's a big bad that we're going to work our way towards. Well, maybe. It could be the big bad. I mean, it could be a Time Lord that we've never heard of. It also could be the Master. That's possible. It could have been Mrs. Flood, but we now know it's not because of the events of this episode. It could be Susan, but she's not bad. She's not likely to be leading a criminal gang. And it could be the Meddling Monk. And there are also other minor Time Lords it could be, but those are the big ones.
Okay. Yeah. Or it could be someone completely different who's just as interested in Time Lords.
It could be. But odds would seem to favor it being a Time Lord, and someone we'd meet at the end of a season. Hopefully not in gigantic form again.
Maybe it's River
Rassilon, it could be.
Could be Rassilon, yeah.
The Master would be a good guess, except he's in a tooth right now.
Yes. He needs an extraction.
Yeah.
Dad jokes.
So
specifically, he needs a tooth extraction.
Yes, a tooth extraction. So Ruby is really adamant about there's a person out there, and the doctor's strangely complacent about this. Like Ruby has to work so hard to convince him of this.
Yeah. By the way, I wanted to mention, I really appreciated the scene where they're folding Poppy's coat, and it's getting smaller and smaller.
That was excellent.
And Ruby is watching this happening, and and Millie Gibson's acting is very subtle and very good.
Very good.
She really conveys the weight of something bad is happening here, and then Poppy is gone and they don't remember her, and then the cot is gone and they don't remember her. And Millie Gibson is what holds that scene together, and her acting helps the audience emotionally through that series of beats. And I want to give Millie Gibson full props for that.
Yeah, she's
directing too, because the folding of the jacket, at first it just seems like they're folding it, and then eventually you start to go, why do they keep handing it back and forth to each other? And wait, is it small? Like they don't point it out. They don't make a big deal out of it. They just, in that sense, they respect the audience to catch on. Like I do appreciate that when that's done. So that was really good. But I did not like the fact that the doctor kind of just dismissed her. Like, the doctor, have you not seen enough weirdness to pay attention when someone is insisting that something's wrong? Like, it just seemed weirdly dismissive of everything. Until she finally gets him to come around.
The doctor has been pretty dismissive of companions before.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. True. Only the last of the Time Lords can change time by 1 degree, and so on and so forth. And then, as you mentioned, Jimmy, the 13th Doctor shows up for no apparent reason.
Mhm.
What was she there for? As opposed to just I don't know, fan service.
She gave him a little tip, you know. She said, "Oh, do this, do that," and he's all,
Oh, the phenotype thingy.
Yeah.
It's a meaningless little bit of technobabble, though.
Right.
I mean,
Right. It's
but
fan service. It's all fan.
It's fan service.
Yeah.
I liked seeing her. I don't know why, but I did.
Yeah, I didn't mind seeing her. It's just there's no reason for it.
Of all
also,
the doctors they could have pulled in, yeah.
Well, but it gave them the chance to use the line of it's always the other guy that's popping in, you know, referring to David Tennant.
Yeah,
that's true.
and I did like how she strolls onto the TARDIS bridge.
Oh,
and it's like, oh, you've redecorated. I don't like it. And why does it?
Which every doctor says.
Every doctor says.
And why does it? And but then she says, and why does it need to be so big? You know?
Something about the bigness of the to emphasize that it's bigger on the inside.
Big.
Yeah. Yep.
So I liked the scene. I thought it was fine. It just didn't really contribute to the plot, but it was a fun scene. And what it also does is it gives the doctor someone to talk to as he's getting ready to regenerate.
That's true.
That can help with the exposition.
That's true. Right. So the doctor gets the bad news that he's not the father anymore, Poppy's father anymore. Mm-hmm. And we have a kind of dramatic scene. He doesn't actually cry in this one, but
he's crying on the inside.
That's right. He's the sad clown. And so despite all the things forgotten in the slipstreams of time, one thing remains: love. And actually, that's not a bad sentiment. Actually, it's like the idea of like they were overdoing all the love stuff, and the doctor telling the 13th Doctor, "I love you," and she's saying, "I'm going to go tell Yaz," and he's like, "Yeah, you don't." And but this one, I thought, like, yes, it kind of reminded me of scripture. You know, all these things, but love remains. I mean, it's a very scriptural sense, and so I feel like there's some truth coming through in the midst of all the nuttiness of a Doctor Who story, but that whatever else, love remains. And I thought that is, if you're going to have a message, that's a good message. Okay,
I agree. Yeah.
And then we build up to the regeneration. He goes and visits his friend Joy, the Christmas star.
By the way, I like how for once he didn't blow up the TARDIS with the regeneration. He went to the door and channeled the energy out of the TARDIS.
Yeah, the BBC said, "Can we keep the set, please? We don't want to have to rebuild this thing again." And then we get. I'm not going to say. I wrote Rose ? What? But I'm going to change that to say Billie Piper, because it could be not Rose. So we'll just say. And my reaction was,
I think we're meant to understand it's
weird.
Not Rose. I mean, it's the face of Rose, but it's not Rose.
And that's weird because the 10th Doctor had a relationship with her. It's different from, the 12th Doctor taking the face of some guy he met in Rome. Mm-hmm. But it's weird when you take an old girlfriend's face. That's weird.
It's also it's not any weirder than the 6th Doctor taking the face of a guy who tried to execute the 5th.
That's true. That's true. Well, at least that guy woke up and tried to strangle his companion. It makes some sense there.
So one of the things that's been noted is that there is a shot of the TARDIS control panel in the midst of the regeneration where you wouldn't expect it. And people have said, okay, at the end of season 1, back in 2005 or 6, whichever it was, by the end of the season, I guess it was still 2005. Rose Tyler looked into the heart of the TARDIS, and became the bad wolf entity. And then the Doctor had to, and she fixed all the Daleks that were the problem at the time. And then the 9th Doctor kissed her and removed all the energy and put it back into the TARDIS. And then that caused his own regeneration. And so and then later we have, in the 50th anniversary, we have the Time Lord weapon, the Moment,
right.
Taking the form of Rose Tyler as the bad wolf entity.
Yeah.
And so one of the proposals, now for people who may not have noticed, in the credits to this episode, we have Ncuti Gatwa as the doctor, and we have Jodie Whittaker as the doctor.
The doctor.
And then it says, and introducing Billy Piper.
It actually says, and Billy Piper. That's it. Yeah, not even introducing.
No, it says introducing.
It says introducing.
Oh, I thought I saw the... Okay, good. Anyway, it doesn't really matter.
But that's different than what they normally do. What they normally do when they introduce a new doctor is they'll credit the previous doctor as the doctor, and then they'll say, and introducing so-and-so as the doctor.
Right.
So that's a sign that Billy Piper may not be the doctor. And this may, based on the appearance of the shot of the TARDIS control panel where it's not expected, it could be a sign, because Ncuti channels his regeneration energy into the TARDIS console.
Yeah.
And then you've got this later picture, and then you've got this person that looks like Billy Piper show up. It could be a manifestation of the Bad Wolf entity. And so that is one plausible theory about what this is. I'd also note there's another precedent they could fall back on, which is the regeneration of Romana, where before she settles on her final form as Lalla Ward, she goes through several different options while she's in the moment of while she's in the process of regenerating. Which is also similar to how David Tennant, like at one point regrew his hand while he was still regenerating because he was still cooking. So there are precedents for temporary things. So they could bring Rose Tyler back, not as a fixed incarnation of the Doctor, but as something occurring between fixed incarnations.
Yeah. That's what I said the other night to you, Dom.
Yeah. On the other hand, I've seen it reported that Billy Piper has an executive producer status going forward. And if that's the case, that would suggest she's going to have a longer tenure. So the reason they don't introduce her as the doctor, maybe at the time they weren't sure, is she going to commit to a full season, or is she just going to be something we deal with in one special, or, something like that.
I did see a few days ago, before the episode aired, that she and David Tennant are doing some BBC iPlayer thing about the monsters of Doctor Who or something like that. I forget what it was called, but something Doctor Who related. I'm like, oh, wow, that's kind of interesting that they ever coming back for that. But the Monster Files, I think, is what they're calling it. Yeah. And
there also have been tweets from both Russell T Davies and Billy Piper saying that they're not, where they're not directly addressing the question of is she the doctor, but they're saying there's a mystery here. You'll have to find out the who, what, how, and why of it all. And Billy Piper adds the when, because they may not be sure when they're going to be able to resolve this.
Right, because there's still no word as of recording of a renewal for another season at all, BBC or Disney Plus.
Right.
So that's a possibility.
Wouldn't it be weird if they brought David Tennant back to be her companion?
The
14th Doctor,
or some random dude that looks like him. I don't know.
Well, and then one thing you and I were talking about, Father Chip, when we were after the aftermath, was why wouldn't they have brought back? It would make more sense to bring back Clara, because she's actually out there. Although regenerating into Clara as opposed to Clara coming back, that would be weird, I guess. But
Billy Piper will be much better for the ratings of whatever they do next than Clara Oswald.
Probably, yeah.
Probably. I mean, she's a big time British actress. So
yeah.
Is she now? Billy Piper now?
Yeah. She was a celebrity before she was on
That's
Doctor
right.
Who.
She was
a pop singer.
Yeah.
Pop star. Yeah.
Also, she does get one line in this where she regenerates and then she breaks the fourth wall. She looks at as the flames are still going, she looks at the camera and smiles and says, "Oh, hello."
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least she got a line.
Yeah. Father Chip, you mentioned to me before we recorded you thought she left. She didn't have a good relationship with Russell T Davies after her time on the show. It's
Well, I thought I went back and I revisited that. It's Eccleston has a bad relationship with Russell T
Yes,
Davies.
sure. Yeah.
She happened to be sitting next to him when he was spouting off about what would be the way he would ever go back, and but then they asked her, and she said, "Oh, I'd go back." And so I misunderstood that. So
okay.
Mhm.
Eccleston has the bad relationship. She clearly doesn't care what Eccleston says or does. But
Yeah.
Eccleston also recently said it would be interesting if Billy
Mhm.
Piper was the doctor.
Yeah.
Did he really?
He's
Yeah.
that.
He did say that.
Also, she was going through some bad times when they were filming the original series. I think she was having a divorce or something like
She
that.
was.
Yeah.
She was.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So that was my mistake on that one, Dom. I'm sorry about that.
No, I'm glad we could talk about it. We clarify because others might also. Well, we're going pretty long. Before we go though, I want to talk about just Ncuti Gatwa's run as the 15th Doctor and sort of our overall thoughts on it, on Ncuti Gatwa, on the show, stories and whatnot. Any thoughts on that? Father Chip, what do you think overall?
Overall, mixed bag, I'd say. I think he could have been good if they had played it. I don't want to use that word. If they you know what I'm saying.
I know exactly the word.
Anyway, if they had done that, and also if they had had better writing. I don't think the writing over the last 2 years has been stellar. I don't think it's been hit or miss, just like the acting has been hit or miss. And Russell T Davies has to take a lot of the responsibility of that because he wrote a lot of the episodes, especially this year. And I think I think that's part of the issue for me is they didn't seem to have a clear plan. They didn't know if they were going to be renewed for a third season either. Maybe that's, as Jimmy has said through the episode, that not knowing affected how things were going. And so I guess I overall not my favorite Doctor, not even in the top 10.
So I want to go off something you just said there, which is that the Russell T Davies, the writing, because to be honest, I don't think the Russell T Davies first run as the showrunner, I don't think he was very good at writing. I think he had some real stinker episodes in the 9th and 10th Doctor era, and that some of the best writing in those seasons was Stephen Moffat and
Stephen Moffat.
Yeah. Although Russell,
but he's a showrunner.
You have to differentiate between scripts that were written on his time and scripts he wrote. And I agree that some of them, like the Christmas
Slovene
specials with this and the things with the Slovene and some of the Christmas specials where you got killer Santas and killer Christmas trees, it's like I'm not pleased with that. Right. But he also wrote Midnight, which to my money is the single best episode of Doctor Who ever.
Sure.
Even better than Blink.
Okay.
Yeah.
And better than classics.
Yeah, right.
Better than what?
Better than some of the classic episodes.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I said the best single episode.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are some story arcs that would be arguable, but
Okay. No, I agree with you. Yeah. So Jimmy, what's your overall take on the 15th Doctor?
I think it was a wasted opportunity. The problems that we had with the Chris Chibnall era were that the scripts were not great, and there were very few that were standout good. When they introduced the Spy Master, that was fun. Spyfall, that was fun. But there were a few episodes like that in Jodie Whittaker's time. And so the scripts were mediocre and there was too much preaching. And so when we get Russell T Davies back, the scripts get better. I think they are better than during the Chris Chibnall era. But the preaching, Russell T Davies did not realize that the preaching needed to back off. He just took the preaching in a different direction. He's just preaching about different stuff instead of preaching about global warming and microplastics and stuff like that. He's obsessed with sexual politics and diversity. And he went whole hog on both of those. And it's gotten to the point that even people who are not fans of the show in Britain have been acknowledging it. That, like, I was listening to an interview on a BBC radio channel where you had people who were not fans of the show, who are commentators, and if they're on the BBC, they're presumably liberal commentators, and they're saying, I watched an episode the other day and I could see all the diversity checkboxes that were being checked, and I can understand why people complain about it, who are regular viewers. And so you have even people in England are taking note of this has just gone off the rails with this stuff. I think Russell T Davies was much better in his first run, where even though he would put in little things, like even in Captain Midnight, Jack. Captain Jack, and in Midnight, Sky Silvestri has just broken up with another woman, that she says she was married to. So there were little elements in the first, but he just became unrestrained with it in the second Russell T Davies era, and it hurt the show. Mark Twain said that fiction must never preach overtly. It can and should, in Twain's view, preach covertly. But when you put it right there on the surface, when the preaching is right there on the surface, it becomes a lecture. And that harms it as an art form. Well, too much of this is lecturing at the audience. They're no longer using metaphors to communicate their ideas. They're just saying it straight out and shoving it in the audience's face. And it hurts it as an art form. It's preaching overtly. It's the reason so much Christian fiction is bad. Right. It's because the writers are trying to shove a particular ideology at the consumer, whether they're a listener or a reader or whatever they are. And it's not, and even though I happen to agree with the ideology, in the case of Christianity, shoving it down the audience's throat and in their face harms it as an art form. It's not handled subtly. And that's the same problem we have here. It's not about the agenda. Do I agree with it or disagree with it? It sucks as art when you do this. And so the artistic quality of the show has gone down, way down. Now, I do think the scripts are better, but they're more interesting and tightly plotted, and there's a certain element of fun in many of them that I don't think were there in the Chris Chibnall era. But the basic quality of the show has been very substantially marred by by all the preaching that it's been doing, both in terms of casting and in terms of dialogue and plot.
So I agree substantially with both of you on all those points. There was stuff to like. I wanted, I look forward to each episode each week, and even this season, especially early on, we talked about how there were some really good episodes. We felt like there was an improvement, and then a little backslide. As far as Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor, I think Ncuti Gatwa was a fine actor. I think he was fun to watch at times. I think they went a little overboard with the camp and that stuff. So I'm looking forward to seeing what else happens. Okay. Go. Thanks, Jimmy.
Thanks, Jimmy.
And so the other thing I just should mention is that, sorry, my Siri just spoke up. The other thing I wanted to mention was that the next thing we're going to see from the Whoniverse, they're calling it, is a new show called The War Between the Land and the Sea. We'd heard about that last year. They filmed it in 2024, but we got a trailer for it after the end of the season of Doctor Who. So you might want to check that out online if you can find it. It's has a darker, more serious tone than Doctor Who. All right. Do you have anything else you want to say on any of this, Father Chip, before we get to feedback?
Yeah, I think what Jimmy was just saying about the, about art and about, the preaching, it was so clear throughout the entire time of the Russell T Davies era. It did mar the whole product. And I think, as I said earlier, I think if they had played the Doctor as the Doctor, they would have gotten more out of a pretty good actor in Ncuti Gatwa, and they had other supporting actors who I thought were really good as well. But I don't understand why Disney and the BBC let him just seem to have total control over where this tone was going to go. And maybe that's a conversation for a different time, but still, it just seemed like he had complete control and he could do whatever he wanted, and this is what we got. So
if I'm going to speculate on that, I would say that after Chris Chibnall and the disaster of the Jodie Whittaker's ratings, the 13th Doctor's ratings, they were looking around. What can we do to save this show? Let's go back to the guy who saved it last time.
Right.
And he said, I'll come back, but you got to give me complete control.
I think you're right.
Yeah. And I feel like that's what we got.
That's the only explanation.
So that, I suppose, is the wrap on the 15th Doctor's era. And I did mention we have some feedback we wanted to go over. Jimmy, just in time to go over some listener feedback that we had.
Yeah.
This was on last week's episode, Wish World. We had USMC on YouTube, right? Ignoring the SJW nonsense, this was more fun. As a female veteran who went on to be a homeschool mom and raised a large family, I really disliked how slamming the stay-at-home mom got so much traction. Raising a family was far more rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
So,
agreed.
There was an interaction. There was a line in this most recent episode that that kind of interacts with that, where Melanie Bush, after they activate the unit chips in people's necks, gets on her motorcycle scooter and drives back to unit headquarters, and then says to the Doctor, I was a housewife, like it was horrible.
Yeah.
But I guess you could argue in Mel's case, because she told us she didn't have any family or children or anything, that in the Wish world, I guess she was in a housewife situation with no family. And so that would be different than actually raising a family.
Yeah. I mean, it could have been worse. She could have been like housewife to Sebelon Gliss.
Yeah, that would have been worse.
A lot worse.
And then Amy on YouTube writes, Dug-a-Doo is Murray Gold's magnum opus.
And it's really taken off. In addition, in the last week, I saw someone do an episode on YouTube that's meant to be set in the Daleks Master Plan, with William Hartnell as the Doctor and Sarah Kingdom and Stephen as the companions, where they visit the planet Grimbald, home of the Dug-a-Doo, and they're trying to get the Terranium core from the Daleks Master Plan back to where it needs to be, and a Dug-a-Doo steals it, and it's just a few minutes long, and it's done in the photo clip style reconstruction that a lot of fan
telesnap sort of thing.
Telesnap version.
Yeah,
but it's only a 2 or 3 minutes long, but it's quite fun if you want to look it up.
That's funny. Yeah, I will not be adding any Dug-a-Doo music at the end of this episode. I'm sorry. I'm done with that. Well, Amy continues. Yeah, Amy continues. I was disappointed in the characterization of the Rani. She is an indifferent, amoral scientist without any allegiance to the Time Lords. Obsession with the Doctor and a lust for power is the Master's MO. The actress was fine. She just deserved better material. A common thread in current Doctor Who, in my opinion. And I think
Fair enough.
Based on our discussion that we agree with that. So thank you both for your feedback on that. All right, so now we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Doctor Who, including Daniel E., Gary J., Christopher P., Thomas V., and Leonidas S. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest, because 90% of our financial support comes from individual donors like you. So you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And that's it from us. We'd love to hear what you think of The Reality War, The 15th Doctor, anything we talked about this time. You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com, the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page. Send an email to drwho@sqpn.com. Visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord, or watch The Secrets of Doctor Who on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the Big Finish 7th Doctor story, The Word Lord. Until then, Jimmy Aiken, thank you for joining me and sharing The Secrets of Doctor Who.
Thanks, Tom.
And Father Chip, thank you for joining us for this 15th Doctor season of The Doctor.
Well, I appreciate it. It's been fun. We'll get together with you guys talking about this stuff. So it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Hopefully it won't be too long before we can do it again. And once again, I'm Don Bettinelli.
Maybe during the war between the land and the sea.
Maybe we'll do that again.
Yeah.
So thank you all for listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest. And remember, every child is made of hopes and dreams and wishes.